Welcome, everyone, to the MMA Happy Hour podcast. I am Kyle Anthony, your host for today. We are talking UFC Paris, headlined by Kyle Borralho and Nassourdine Imavov. We're going to be breaking down 4 plays here on the show today. Now, we are coming off an off week. No UFC last weekend, but weekend before we did catch on our 5% max bet. Profitable in China. Felt good about it. Nice early cash and enjoyed the rest of our day. I know UFC bettors there. We're not really used to having a Saturday night off, but last weekend, no UFC, which was interesting. Interestingly enough, if you checked out my Twitter at Kyle Anthony UFC, I did get a message from Chris Cyborg, who was really breaking down my incorrect bet against. I did take Larissa Pacheco, which was last year, October of last year, and she did give me her 2 cents on not agreeing with it and all those things, but ended up, hey, I got no beef with Cyborg. Ended up being a nice conversation with her, but was interesting that she pulled it up from a year ago. Check that out if you want to. But if you want to become a client, link down in the description. I do have plays up right now, 3 plays locked in for this weekend. Excited about it. We got some good cards coming up. So let's lock in and let's load up. So with that being said, let's dive into the main event of the evening between Kyle Borralho and Nassourdine Imavov. Now, this is a spot here where you've got Kyle. He is minus 130. On the comeback here, we've got Nassourdine Imavov sitting around that plus 110 mark. Now, we have bet Nassourdine over his last 3 fights, profitable in all of those bets that we did make with him. We did cash on Nassourdine against Brendan Allen. We did cash on Nassourdine at minus 120 against Jared Cannonier. And we also did cash a nice plus money ticket on Nassourdine at plus 145 against Israel Adesanya, where he got that knockout. Now, there are a lot of nice things that he has done, nice cash in those tickets, but I'm getting off the Nassourdine Imavov train at this point here. I do think that Kyle presents a lot of problems here, and we are going to dive into it. So really, when I look at this fight here, I think, there's no doubt that you've got Imavov as a guy that has good striking, good range, good distance management overall. He does have some decent wrestling. He can kind of go to that when he needs it, and these versatile combinations that he does have. But the big issue for me here, the first thing going back and looking at it, is the fact that, most of the fighters that Imavov faced were primarily strikers. A lot of guys were just really strikers looking to keep the fight on the feet, outland, outstrike. And Imavov was the guy that really offered up the wrestling, had the wrestling advantage, was able to kind of mix it up a little bit when he needed to. And that, to me, is a spot where, yes, he's been able to take advantage of that in certain spots, but this is also a spot here where he's not going to have that advantage. He was having that advantage. I think that helped him very much, especially when he was getting tired in certain spots. But that's the first thing that I do see is a problem here for him. And the biggest red flag on the Nassourdine side first is going to be his bad cardio. And I think it is, I can't really understate it as much. This is really something where, going back and watching, you are seeing time after time after time, whether he wins, whether he loses, he definitely is showing a decline where early he has got crisp combinations, good footwork, good movement, but things really start to decline. I would say, midway, end of second round, you are seeing that decline. You are seeing the footwork slow down. You're seeing the combinations get a little more sloppy. You're seeing a lot of that stuff really start to slow down. And, even in his win against Jared Cannonier in a fight where, Cannonier was maybe up, 2-1 going to the 4th, maybe, but it was a very close fight overall. And it kind of felt like, Cannonier might be kind of picking up the pace a little bit here where you were seeing Imavov slow down. Imavov lands a big shot, gets that finish. But the takeaway, even in that finish, is the fact that during that finish, you could see Imavov was on zero. He was on empty. He really was throwing everything he had. And it looked like if Cannonier somehow was able to get out of that, it wasn't going to be very good for Nassourdine with his cardio, with his energy, and all of those things. I think that's a big takeaway, but also the fact that, we talked about a little bit, but is the fact that Imavov, yes, he has been able to utilize some of that wrestling, but this is a spot here where he's not going to be able to utilize the wrestling as much as he has primarily used here. And we have seen he's vulnerable off of his back. And now we just talked about a lot of the fighters that he's faced really are strikers or guys going to want to work out, work on the feet. Pretty much the 2 times that, guys who are going to look for takedowns, they found success. It was a while ago, but against Phil Hawes, who has an absolute glass jaw. But Phil Hawes, even in this spot, years ago, was able to go 4 for 7 on takedowns with 11 minutes of control time. And he really just, kept the control time there. You saw Imavov was slowing down. He was unable to kind of have the energy to scramble back to his feet, create any type of space, and really was just, flattened on the ground for most of that fight and pretty much positionally as well, up against the cage, all of those things. And then even the other one was against Brendan Allen. And Brendan Allen might have worse cardio than Nasruddin Imavov, but in the first 10 seconds of that fight, Allen had a takedown. Allen got control time. Allen ended up keeping him on his back for the entire first round, which I think, again, is another terrible sign, because Allen, after that, had nothing left. It was a sloppy fight. Both of them looked pretty sloppy overall. And Brendan Allen wasn't able to get any more takedowns. Imavov goes out there, gets the victory. But to me, that's really opens up opportunities and paths to victory for Borralho, where I think he can weaponize the cardio. He can really push that pace. We know that wrestling is one of the more taxing things that you can do to your cardio. I think he's going to force that on Imavov. He knows that's going to be, really where he can start to really push on a weakness. And being a fighting nerds guy, we know that these guys, they come in with great game plans. They come in with great strategies. They really are really good at really implementing some type of strategy, leveraging, where they have opportunities. And I think he's going to be able to do that. I think early, Imavov might be able to do certain things, but I think as this fight goes on, second, third, fourth round, fifth round, I think that Borralho continues to take over, continues to fight smart, get takedowns, and really just outwork him. So in this spot here, I do like Kyle Borralho here. He's sitting around minus 130, and I think it's a solid price. Next one we're going to talk about is going to be Umar Sy. He is minus 390 on the comeback here at Brenson Ribeiro. He is plus 280. Now, some of you might have PTSD if you bet Umar Sy in the last time that he stepped in the cage against Alonzo Menefield. Now, I definitely had Umar Sy, thought he'd go out there and absolutely spark out Alonzo. I thought Alonzo no longer on the juice anymore. Looks like he's half of the fighter that he really used to be. But with that being said, the first round, Umar Sy did his thing. It looked like he won the first round, but it really didn't go well for him after that. Pretty sloppy fight for both of these guys. He was only 1 for 5 on takedowns. Once he couldn't get those takedowns, he kind of abandoned the entire, strategy of really utilizing the wrestling. And we also got to remember also that, Alonzo Menefield is still a top 15 guy in the world, so it's not, yes, he might be, end of his career. He might be, tail end of that and not looking great. But this is Umar Sy, who was really kind of, putting it all together, growing up in the cage, and really just a strong athlete that's starting to build around his striking skill set and his overall fighting profile. And that also is just showed the experience level of Alonzo Menefield. But against Brenson Ribeiro here, this is a completely different type of fight here overall, and I don't rate Brenson at all here. He's a guy that's very hittable in the pocket, and he's also a guy that has a big negative striking differential. He's going to come forward. He's fine throwing. He's okay being in the pocket. He does have some power, but his willingness to exchange in the pocket, I think, is going to cause him a lot of problems here. I think you're going to see Umar Sy land these big shots, find these big opportunities to really put the hurt on Brenson. And then plus you also got in the fact that Brenson, yes, he's a guy that is hittable, but he's also a guy that can be finished. Out of his 8 career losses, 6 of them are inside the distance. And that, to me, I think opens up opportunities for Umar Sy to, again, he's hittable, he can hurt him, but I also do think that this is a quick turnaround. You have Brenson, who was brutally knocked out in the first round in June, and he is coming back to fight another physical freak, another strong guy in Umar Sy. And I think that turnaround is only going to offer more opportunities, I think, for a finish to materialize here. And then you've got Umar. I think he's got the power in his hand. He also has that wrestling. And, I think he could knock out a Brenson on the feet. I think that's absolutely a possibility here where he could just go out there. Brenson's willing to exchange, and he might be able to land the big shot. But I think the path of least resistance here is the takedowns, is the wrestling. And if you look at Brenson, statistically speaking, he has a 0% takedown defense rate. 0. He has never defended a takedown successfully in the UFC. 7 times that an opponent has shot at him, and 7 times he's been taken down. And that's really where I think that this leads to a great opportunity here, right into the strength of Umar Sy, who could look for the takedowns, look for that control time. And once he's down there and once he has that top position, I think his ground and pound, he's able to find some big shots, throw big elbows, or hunt for that submission. I don't think that you're going to see Brenson get up. I think, again, once he's down, I think he's going to be able to keep him down and really start to land the big shots here. Plus, you've got Sai out of his 11 victories, 8 are inside the distance here. So for me here, getting off the minus 390 number here, I do like Sai inside the distance around minus 135 here. It's not widely available, this line yet, but I do see it out there and I do like it. And that's the spot where I'm betting Umar Sai inside the distance minus 135. And the next one here we're going to talk about is going to be Andreas Gustafsson. He is minus 120. On the comeback here, we've got Renat Fakhretdinov. He is plus 110. Now, I'm sorry, plus 100. Now, this is your grappler versus grappler matchup. There's no doubt about it. Pure grappler versus grappler. Both these guys are going to look to wrestle. Both these guys are going to look for takedowns, control time. They're going to look to bank rounds. They're going to push that wrestle heavy game plan repeatedly. And they're just going to look to really utilize that for the most part. Strikes are pretty much cutting distance for them to just kind of get their hands and latch onto you overall. But you look at Renat, and the first thing you see is a 24-2 record. Nice shiny record there. But man, he has had some really bad performances over his last few fights. And again, in wins, but not the greatest showing. You know, he fought Zaleski dos Santos. This is a fight where he was able to, win the first 2 rounds and was getting brutally beaten up, almost finished in the 3rd round. Ends up being a 10-8 and ended up being a draw in that fight, which was just a bad look. Showed the cardio going down, showed a lot of those things starting to go down. Then he fought, another one was he fought Nicholas Dalby. This is the fight here where Dalby hurt him badly in a spot where I thought that Dalby actually edged it out 2-1 on the decision. It ends up being a split going for Renat. So a spot there where, maybe he didn't deserve that victory, but most recently he definitely didn't deserve this victory against Carlos Leal, which is a spot where I thought Leal landed the far more damaging shots, really hurt him. It looked like Leal was pretty much, finding the opportunity to get the victory. It ends up going to Renat again. And this is a spot where we have seen how many times in a row we've seen him rocked, wobbled, dropped, looking really sloppy. And I think that really mix is going to set up really good things here for a big guy like Andreas Gustafsson, where the biggest red flags on Renat is going to be he's chinny and another guy who's got terrible cardio. And, early he's going to have that good wrestling. He's going to be able to look for those positionally win, but he really doesn't have the cardio to push that kind of pace. And we saw it against Leal where, against Leal, Renat was 2 for 19 on takedowns. Not great, but many of those takedown attempts were the most sloppiest, telegraph level changes that you could see. And yes, it counts. And as he's shooting on it, but a lot of these were just half-hearted, not going to happen. And that's where I see this kind of going here, where I don't really think that, he might be able to shoot early and find opportunities. But I think that you've got a guy who in Gustafsson, who's going to have that physicality advantage, have that strength advantage, can move forward, can nullify some of the wrestling I think that you can get from Renat. And it starts to really push a spot where I think the relentless pressure, the relentless pace, cage pushing, up in the clinch, these are all things that are going to be very taxing, I think, on Renat. He doesn't have that physicality and strength. We've seen him even when he's on the ground. He does not have the, heavy top pressure. He'll get a guy down. The guy gets up again. I don't think he's going to be able to keep, even if he does get Gustafsson down, I think he's too strong and he's too good to get back up on his feet or scramble or whatever it is. But I don't really think Renat's going to find much success getting him down overall. He's got the better cardio than Renat as well. So there's just a lot of things I think go very well with him. I do think that you're going to see Gustafsson grind out rounds, win positionally, and there could be a possibility for that late finish in that 3rd round. But I do like Gustafsson here. I think the minus 20 line here is a 120 line here is very generous here. I do think that, yes, again, Renat has that shiny record, but overall, I think Gustafsson get the job done. So I'm going Andreas Gustafsson at minus 120 to get the job done. And the last one here we're going to talk about is going to be Brad Tavares. He is minus 218 on the comeback here. We've got Robert Bryczek. He is plus 180. Now, entering the UFC here, Bryczek kind of had a little bit of hype behind him, right? He was, a little bit of hype, a little bit of momentum behind him, 5 straight knockout first round finishes for him outside of the UFC, has good boxing, has shown to have some power overall, and looked like, hey, he's got a little bit of a highlight reel here. Yes, against low level guys, but has shown a little bit. Then he faces Ior Peteria, where Peteria might be one of the worst guys in the division. Sad to say, but that's probably the truth here. I don't think very highly of him. He's a very low-level fighter overall, and it was a terrible performance from Bryczek there, where Peteria went out there, dropped him early, ended up outlanding Bryczek 2-1 on significant strikes. It was pretty one-sided overall. Not that it was just a flat performance from him. And part of it, you did see that how really that Bryczek struggled with speed. It's not that Peteria is this really, elite level striker, but he does have a decent amount of kickboxing, but the speed was way too much for Bryczek, who wants to kind of stay in the pocket, throw big shots, throw big, big looping hooks. And, Peteria just did enough where he was able to, land a couple of shots, get out of the pocket, land a couple of shots, and threw up the 3 rounds, was able to get the victory. Now you've got, him going up against Tavares here. And this is a spot where Tavares is far more well-rounded, the better overall fighter between these two. And yes, Tavares is 37 years old, and that is a little bit of a concern. But you also look at Bryczek, he's 35. And he's 0-1 in the UFC. And that, to me, is definitely, speaks a little bit here, where you're looking at a guy that is near the end of his career. The UFC signs him when he's 35 and, I don't think really has much left in the tank. And he comes in, loses to Peteria here. I think this is a spot here where strength of schedule is going to be very important, where he has not really fought anybody. And we all know that Brad Tavares has fought really the who's who. He has fought a lot of the top level guys, one of the gatekeepers in that division. And, he wins some, he loses some, but overall he has a better skill set compared to Bryczek. And I do think that over the 3 rounds, you're going to be able to see Tavares just outland him, outwork him. We've seen that Bryczek has very low volume. He's a guy that doesn't really push out any kind of volume. He's looking for that one big shot, and he's been able to do it in lower level organizations, knocking out these bums in the first round. Here, I think it's a lot different here when you're talking about heading into the UFC, even when it's against lower level guys like Peteria. And I obviously think that Tavares is higher level than Peteria. Plus, I do think he has faster hand speed. I think that you've got Tavares, who can push out that volume, have the faster hand speed, and really cause a lot of problems there for Bryczek overall. I think he can defend some of the takedowns, implement his own takedowns if he needs it. And this is a spot here where I do think Tavares does get the job done, but I do think it is by points. I think we can get a nice little price there at plus 105 by points on Tavares by decision. I think that's where I'm going here with this, and I do like that spot. So in this fight, we're going to be going Brad Tavares by points plus 105. So there you have it for my plays for UFC Paris. If you want to become a client, link down in the description. Again, I have plays up for clients right now. 3, I will be adding to that. I do love this card from a betting perspective. And let's get it done. Let's cash. And I'll see you next week.